Let's take a look at the MuseGrid block build template and see how we can modify things. Now, you'll notice that in the plan layout, the template only has a single page. So what we've done is we've built the entire site into a single page, and we get to create this nice horizontal can't get my words out this morning, horizontal slider effect. And the way we've achieved this is by having a super long page. In this particular case, if we look at the page properties, we can see in our layout here that it's actually 12,000 pixels wide, and it's got a minimum height of 500. And then we've split our columns into 2,000 pixels. Now, we've done this so that on even large screens, the slides should be separated nice and neatly so there's no overlap. So this is a 12,000 pixel page. We've then put anchor points at the top, very top, and starting point of each section, and then our navigation links to that. Now, because Muse has got the built-in smooth scrolling effect, we get the feeling of a large full screen slider. Let's just take a quick look at how that works in reality. Let's go to musegrid.com, into our templates and into Blocbuild here. We'll just hit the preview. So we have this nice navigation, this nice smooth scrolling effect, and then these little arrow pointers to show us the location we're on, and then all the color connects up as well, so we get this nice effect of this entire panel being all connected. But that's just done with, as I said, anchor points and just a very wide page. So it's a new way of thinking about building a full page website. Rather than going vertically like most full pages do, this does horizontally. Okay, but let's take a look at modifying. Now, as these are all on one page, it's great because you can open it up and edit the entire site here. We are using our Style Magician page as well to modify some of the elements, so you can modify items within the site from here, such as the color scheme or the hyperlinks and so on. So that might be a place where you want to start. So we can change, we've got the button styles here and so on, so it's quite easy to change various elements on the site. So if we go back to our home page here, now the first thing you might want to do is change the navigation. So where is that navigation? Well, if we wanted to change the names of these, if we click on one of these blocks here, we'll see that we can't see the actual wording. So I'm going to click on the little blue arrow here, and I'm going to switch the triggers on top on. So at the moment it's off, triggers on top on, and this these are tooltip widgets here. And what we've just done is we've set, by setting the triggers on top to off, then we get this a nice effect that when we hover over the trigger, this about here disappears behind that content, and that's how we get that rollover effect, and it's hide on rollout. So when you take your mouse off that area, it hides. So if we click triggers on, and that's the same with all of these, we can then click in and we can click into this text here and modify it. We can also change this icon here. Now we use for this one we use icon fonts. We have the code built into the page, so just be aware of that. But how do we change this icon font here? So if we right click and pull up edit HTML, we can see that we've got this little this I tag here with this class icon file. Where do we get that from? Let's open up the browser and let's go to Font Awesome, and here we have all of these wonderful icon fonts that all hosted on a CDN, so we're connecting to that dynamically, so you do need an internet connection to preview these in the site as well. But let's say for instance we wanted to change that icon to this icon signal. Just click on there and we get this piece of code here. We can just copy that, go back to this page here, click into it, edit HTML, change the code over, click OK. It'll take a second to just create a connection and cycle through, and there we have our new font. Now the great thing as well with icon fonts is they're controlled by the text panel, and we can change the dimensions of them, the text size, because they are interpreted as fonts. We can also, if we want to have a hover over effect, we can apply a link, and we can use the hyperlink styling tool to change the way that looks. I'm going to just set that back to how it was. So we'll just undo edit HTML and we go back there. So that's how you create your icon fonts from Font Awesome. So with each of these now, we would click on them if we wanted to change the text, go to the triggers on top, and then we can click that text. Now another way of doing this, of course, as well, is to use the layers palette. Now I find the layers palette, especially in complex design, absolutely fantastic now for locating and selecting things. So let's say for instance now I wanted to select that composition. If we look in the layers palette, we see a little orange triangle here to say that that layer is one of the layers in there is selected. So if we open this up a bit larger, we can scroll down and we can see that this composition, there's the composition, and it's, we know it's selected because we've got the color square in the little square icon here. So if we dial that open, we can click that open. Now currently we haven't got anything selected, but the top part is the target, and at the moment we're not showing triggers on top, so we are showing triggers below. Let's see what happens if we click on it and switch to triggers on top. Notice how now in the layers panel those two items have swapped places. If I switch that back off again, they swap back, so we've got a trigger and a target. So we know that underneath is the trigger. So if we click on dial that trigger open, we can see we've got that HTML item that relates to the code, and then we've got the about us text. So let's select that. Now notice when I click it, it goes blue. However, this is not selected yet, so we need to click that little, and there we have that selected. Now we can't preview that currently because obviously it's under the target, so we could just swap those around if we wanted to. Just drag those, swap places with those. It's a little bit fiddly sometimes. We should say, come on, move. Oh well, let's just do it the easy way and just go like that. So we've got that trigger on top, and we've got that about us selected. So it's very straightforward to select items even when they're really difficult to select by using the layers palette. Right, next thing, let's take a look at our navigation. Now the navigation is hidden currently. The way that this navigation works is I'm going to select this slider here, and I'm going to just use my shift keys and take it up so it's nice and neat. I'm not going to move it around by hand. I'm going to make it nice and neat. And a good idea would be to note the location of that. So in the transform palette, I can see that this item is set to 0, 0. Okay, so we know that it's 0 from the top and 0 from the left. It's 0, 0. So when I take it up, we can see that we're now at 0 minus 60. So if I wanted to set that back in place, I could just type in 0 and move it back into place. Okay, so that's just, it's worth doing that kind of thing when you do design, when you're designing and modifying things. Just take down a note of where your end item is if you need to move it around to work on something, so that you can put it back in place and it doesn't break the design. So here we have our menu, so it was sitting underneath, and the reason we do that is because these layers are the highest layers, and this menu sits underneath, but it's actually on a higher level than all of the other content, and that generates the effect of when we slide across, you'll notice that this menu is also pinned top left, So it's going to stay in its location. So wherever we slide across when we're previewing the site, that menu is going to stay there. But the content behind it is scrolling. So we get the effect that the menu is moving on top of each item. But it's in actual fact the menu staying still and the content is sliding. Okay, so this is just a normal menu widget. And what we've done is we've switched off the edit together. So we initially applied the rollover style. If we look in the states panel here, we can see that our rollover styles are all exactly the same. There's no rollover effect. You could change that, but there's no rollover effect. But by switching off the edit together, what we're able to do then is make the background of each of these items a different color. So we're using this color palette here. Now if we switched it back on, those would retain the changes, but once we started modifying individual the elements, it would start to apply the same changes across the board. So we leave that switched off for the time being. Now if we want to change the names of these items, we just click into them here, and we can double click here. Now we could select and we could change that to whatever we wanted that to be. Once we've finished modifying this, we want to make sure that it goes to the correct anchor point within the site. So if we click on the about there, we can see in our links panel here that it's clicking to the anchor. So we see this little anchor icon here. It's going to the anchor in the desktop layout. So we've got two layouts, the phone layout and the desktop, and this particular button is going to, and we can see it referenced here as well. We can see it's an anchor point because it's got an anchor next to it, and we can see that it's ticked, so that's where it's going to link to. So once we've modified those items, we just click back on our slider here. Let's set that back to 0. And modifications made. Now of course if you wanted to add an extra page, it would be very straightforward, because we are using, each one of these sections is 2000 pixels each, and the site is currently 12,000 pixels, so that is 6 individual sections. If we wanted to add another section which would be 2000 pixels wide, we would just add another 2000 pixels onto the dimensions, which would make it 14,000 pixels wide, and then we could add a new section. We could then also add a new menu item by clicking this open, clicking on one of the buttons and clicking plus. It'll take a second or two just to add that menu item in, and it comes up. It's just replicated the previous one, added 2 there, so we would change that. And notice how the menu's bunched up as well to fit that in. However, this design is aimed at quite a small navigation menu, so it might not be an appropriate design if you want lots of menu items. Let's just put this back to 0 here. So we've looked at modifying the icon fonts, modifying these items here, how we would edit those. Notice too as well that we have these are icon fonts. Wherever you see little icons in this site, even this arrow here is an icon font, just set to large. All of these are icon fonts. So wherever you see a little icon, those are definitely Font Awesome icon fonts. So they're easy to modify the way we showed you with this, exactly the same method. We've also looked at modifying the navigation, and we've talked about how we could add another section. So I hope this has been useful. We did enjoy building this template. We've had some good feedback already, and looking forward to seeing what you guys build with it. And thanks for watching.